You got to make sure, man. There we go. That's it. Now they can. That's too loud. Okay. Yeah, you definitely can hear me. Yeah, I think we can definitely be heard here. Well, let me just go ahead and apologize to anybody that was watching or wanting to watch last week, because we didn't. We wound up not going live last Wednesday night. We got into a discussion in here, and probably maybe we should have had the discussion live, but we didn't. So it was just a conversation about various things. But then we got into some theological discussions about some stuff, and which turned out, I mean, it was a good time of discussion. But we are in 1 Kings, and we are in chapter 19. Trying to get finished up with some of those things. There are 22 chapters in 1 Kings, and I'd like to get through those. 1 Kings 19 is a summary. It's a continuation, the continued story of Elijah's triumph over the false prophets of Baal. Chapter 18, Elijah had called down fire from heaven, asked God to show himself that he was the true God, and he won the contest of the who's the real God contest. And all the false prophets were killed, and Ahab, you get in chapter 19, Ahab, he goes back and tells Jezebel, his wife, that what has happened, and don't seem to make any difference to her. She doesn't seem to be, the fact that all these prophets were killed. And I've been looking up and researching a little bit about prophets. A lot of them are appointed by the king or something. They're not true prophets of God. They're prophets that have been appointed. And so they are, they're to serve in the church, or they're to serve the king's purposes, or whatever it may be. At any rate, all these prophets have been killed. Jezebel didn't seem to be caring. Now, she simply threatened Elijah's life. Damien, can you turn that down just a little bit more? I'm echoing down here to an empty house, and yeah, that's No, you're good. That's fine. I'm just making sure. What gets me about this is that Elijah has it's like he's been on the mountain of God. Really, he's on Mount Horeb, and they've set up these altars, and God has shown up big time on behalf of Elijah. If you read through 18, you read what all God did, and how God moved through and in Elijah just powerfully, this man of God. And then when you get into 19, Debbie, are you looking there at 19? Read the first couple of verses there.
Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that one of them."
Okay. Well, you see what she's saying. You have to realize, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. By this time tomorrow, you'll be dead. And now think about it. Elijah has just stood on behalf of the Lord, of the true God of Israel. There is no other God. He just proved that. Baal doesn't exist. Baal, they've called on Baal. These 450 prophets have called on Baal, and you've got another 400 prophets that are there that are for Asherah. Ishtar is what the original name would be for her. And Elijah has stood up against all of these. And now, and all of them are dead. They're all dead, which I think is pretty brutal, but it is what it is. God has moved, and Elijah has stood strong against all of these enemies. And Ahab goes and tells his wife Jezebel what Elijah has done, and she sends a message to Elijah, "Well, I'm just going to kill you." And the word tells me, there in verse 3, that he was afraid, and he rose and he ran for his life came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But the day before, he's the man of God. And now the next day, he's afraid of one person. He's afraid for his life from one person. And I've never really understood that, other than the fact that you just never know what's going on inside your head. That different people impact your life in different ways or have a different effect upon you. He wasn't afraid of those prophets because he knew they were false. Jezebel was a real deal, I guess, of some way. She was something that he wasn't prepared for. He wasn't afraid of Ahab. Ahab's a king, but he's not afraid of him. I mean, our first introduction of Elijah to Ahab is he comes face to face with Ahab and says, it's not going to rain for the next 3.5 years, or until I say that it's going to. I mean, he just approached him straight up. We don't know where Elijah came from. He's Elijah the Tishbite, but we have no introduction of him at all other than blunt force. There he is, right in the face of Ahab, saying, this is what's going to happen, and it does. And so here's this man of God, this prophet of God, who is now afraid of this woman because she says, I'm going to kill you. If may the gods, and she's already, that's what she said right there. Have you read it? Sent a message saying, so may the gods do to me. Well, it's already been proven. He's already proven the gods don't exist. That there's only one true God. And that's what he's saying right here, is that, that's what confounds me about this at times. But he runs and he flees for his life right there. Tyler, are you readable tonight? Yeah. Okay. Chapter 19. Take on just look at verse 4 to begin with. Chapter 19, verse 4. Yeah, okay. Hold on, hold your place right there as we get through this. Can you see, a little sidebar note right here. Here is somebody who has gone from being on top of the mountain, literally, to in a deep state of depression. But what we're going to see right there is God's not just with him on the mountain. He's with him in the depression part too. He's with him in the tough time. Read the next verse, verse 5.
Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat.
Okay, now think about this. Think about what's going on right there. He traveled this day's journey. He's gone, and he comes and he sits down under this broom tree, as your Bible says, a juniper tree. And he's talking to the Lord. Remember, he's talking to the same one who just showed himself true by raining down fire from heaven and taking the sacrifice and all the rocks and licking up the water and the dirt that was there. I mean, all of that. This is the same God that he's talking to now. And he's talking to the same God and says, I've had enough. I can't take this anymore. I just want to die. And what does he do? I think the Lord touches him a little bit right here and gives him rest. What did you say he did? First thing he did was he laid down and he slept under that same tree where he stopped and was talking to the Lord. He stopped, and I think God, kind of touched him and said, let's go to sleep for a little while. Let's rest. That's what you need. You don't need. It's exhausting. I guess that's exhausting. I've never been depressed. I mean, I've been depressed, but I've never been in a physical state of depression like some people that go into a deep depression about things. I've never been there, but I do know that the more you dwell on something, it's exhausting, mentally exhausting, to dwell on things that just pound in your mind. And, it wasn't something that was pounding in his mind as far as dealing with the prophets of Baal. That wasn't an issue for him. Dealing with someone who says, I'm going to kill you. Which means for that, he can stand up. Those are false prophets. He can stand up against those people. We can stand up against the false gods. We can stand up against the false prophets. But this woman's going to use her military. She's not going to come at him with her false gods. May they do to me if I don't do this to you. What she's saying is that I'm going to take care of you personally. I'm going to use my means to get rid of you. And I'm going to do it right away. It's going to happen right away. And it hits him, it just hits him in the wrong way, and he takes off.
She did have military power.
Well, sure she did. Yeah. I mean, her husband's King Ahab. Yeah. So she's got all kinds of power. I mean, she's got all kinds of influence. She's an evil woman. This is an evil woman. And makes no bones about that she's an evil woman. And he says, he gets this day's journey away from where he's been right there. And he says, I'm exhausted. He's saying, I'm tired. I'm tired. And I remember one time when I was in Somerset, and I don't mind it being online. I was exhausted. I was absolutely exhausted, mentally exhausted. I'd been fighting battles that I didn't know that preachers had to fight. I didn't know we had to do those things. And against conflicts that shouldn't be there, that shouldn't be in the church, that shouldn't be against me. And every year, Cheryl and I go to this conference in Lexington called Shepherding the Shepherd. And it's for pastors and their wives to refresh, to just get away and be encouraged and loved on, and it's just a great atmosphere, and I love going. There's been only a couple times over the past 20 plus years that we've not been able to go. Once when Jace was born, and one other time, and I think that's about the only times that we've missed. But as we were sitting there in this conference, this guy was talking. I don't remember his name. He wasn't preaching, but he was talking to. He was like a counselor of some kind, doing something. And it just struck me. It just struck me, and I had been holding it together as long as I could. And when we finished that time together, people were getting up and leaving, and I just sat there, and then tears started flowing. I just started weeping, and I laid over in Sherilyn's lap and cried from exhaustion and from hearing things like this. I mean, I didn't have anybody threatening my life, but I did have a number of people that were very much opposed to me, and I didn't even know why. I didn't even know why. I wasn't what they wanted, I don't guess. But, at any rate, that's the closest of depression that I've ever been through. But I understand the concept of being there when you have to battle something over and over and over again. And Elijah honestly, he's been dealing with this same issue for years now. I mean, because the first time we see Elijah is when he approaches Ahab and says, "This is what's going to happen. This is not going to rain for the next 3.5 years." And then God moves him out, and he goes into a solitude, because God hides him by the brook Kidron. Sorry about that. That was somebody in the church that did that. It wasn't me. Pan that camera down over there. I just want to show you the culprit that's doing this right. At any rate, he's gone through this, and he's had to absolutely trust and rely on God for everything. Even when you read about the ravens bringing him food, and he's getting water from the brook, and then the brook dries up, and he has to go by God's instructions. He's going through all the pains of of what he said is going to happen to somebody else. You know, the water's going to, there's not going to be any rain for 3.5 years. Well, he's going to feel the effects of that too. You know, when you lead a church, you're going to feel the effects of what you're leading, of how you're trying to guide. You know, if I say that we need to be a missional church, so to speak, then I have to be leading the way in mission involvement. You know, I have to be that. But if I was to stand up and say, you know, the water's going to dry up here, well, then I have to deal with the reality that it's going to dry up for me too. You know, I'm not going to keep getting water if nobody else is. And so this is what he's been going through for all this time. And then he goes in and he fights these battles and he's dealing with all these issues year after year after year now. And then he comes before this big major occurrence where he's facing off against all these false prophets of Baal. And they're doing all their thing, and he's standing up there on the mighty mountain of God, and he calls down fire from heaven, and God rains down fire and does all these things. And it's an extremely high moment of exhilaration of seeing the presence of God. And then to be, when you're, it's like Monday morning. Let me say it this way. This is not near to this degree, but you've preached your heart out in here, and you've seen God moving, and you're just excited about what God has done. People have gotten saved and lives have been changed and people have joined the church and all this coming out, and you're standing outside and one of the first persons walks out and says, "It's cold in there." Wow. You know? You've been a part of all this that's going on. And lo and behold, somebody says, "I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. They didn't get anything at all." And that becomes the focus of your day. It hasn't been about all the other things. It's about those who slapped you, took it away, or tried to take it away from you. There, and this is what he's going through. He's going through depression. He laid down. God let him lay down and get him some rest. And then the angel touches him, as you read, and he says, "Arise and eat." And he did. He got up and verse 6 says, he looked, and behold, there was at his head a bread cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank. And you would think, okay, we're good. But what does it say that he did? What's the last part of verse 6 say that he did?
He ate and drank and he laid down again.
He laid back down. He needed more rest. Getting the full meal, getting his belly full.
Will the angel come back a second time?
Angel comes back again. Angel comes back again. There in verse 7. Go ahead and read that again, Tyler. Verse 7. Verse 7 and 8. 7 and 8.
The angel of the Lord came back the second time and touched him. "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank, strengthened by the food that he traveled 40 days and 40 nights till he reached Horeb, the mountain of God.
Think about this. He ate twice. But that second meal that he had, how long did it last him? 40 days and 40 nights. And a thing that what I think is most important to see about right there is that he went in the strength of that food. Who provided him the food? The Lord. Angel of the Lord provided him the food. So he went in the strength of the Lord. God gave him what he needed. And that's what I think in a lot of times when we deal with church stuff, we deal with life as a believer. You know, the world is constantly trying to slap us in the face. The world is constantly trying to knock us down, give us a different direction, give us everything with things that we don't need or we don't want to have, or, those things that try to hurt us. And that's not what God does for us. Because here's Elijah who's gone through the difficulties. He's up on the mountain. And he's back down in the deep parts of the valley going through depression. He needs rest. His body's tired. He needs all this. And God provides for him not one but two meals and enough rest that second meal takes him back into where God wants him to be. He gets into the mountain of Horeb and then the food that he's eaten has sustained him. Now, he may have more meals between those 40 days and 40 nights right there. I don't know. We're not told that. But we're told that that the Lord has strengthened him, that for 40 days and 40 nights. So I don't know that he got another meal at that time, but he was able to travel that journey for a month and 10 days, for 40 days of journey to get to the mountain that God wanted him to be on. Because God didn't want to leave him in that other spot. He didn't want to leave him down in that depressed state. He didn't want to leave him in that valley of issue. He wanted to bring him back to a mountaintop experience because he had something else for him. He wanted him to see something else personally. It wasn't just about him, ministering to others. God is ministering to him personally now. He's going to take care of him personally. So we move to the next thing right there. And Damien, you got your Bible open, ready? Okay, read for us right here, verses 9 and 10. By the way, chapter 19 is just full, so it's verse by verse in this one. I'm not just scanning over this one. This is good stuff. So read verse 9 and 10.
There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too.
Okay. All right. Here's an honest answer. He's not there yet. He is not there. Elijah is not there yet. He has been, he's fled from Jezebel. He has already said to the Lord, take my life. God gives him rest and 2 meals, strengthens him, and brings him back to a mountain spot. And he finds a cave there at the mountain of Horeb. And once he's there, the word of the Lord comes to him. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Why are you in this spot? And I think this is something that, this would preach, Tyler. This stuff would preach. I know it would because I've preached on it before. But I'm just saying, there are times when whatever position that you're in, whatever the spot that you're in right there, that God speaks a truth into your life and says, why are you here? Now, God knows the answer, and God's fixing to give him the answer of why he's there. But Elijah's answer is one from the depressed state that he was in, from the condition that he was in, and from what was happening. What has he said? I've been very zealous for the Lord. I've been doing my thing. I have been serving. I've been doing my thing all along right there. And the sons of Israel, the Israelites. Now, okay, we're talking about the Israelites. He's talking about the northern kingdom. These are the ones that he's battling against right here. This is who Ahab and Jezebel. He's the king of the northern kingdom, Israel. He said, the Israelites, they have forsaken your covenant. They tore down your altars. They've killed your prophets with the sword. And I'm the only one left. You ever feel like it's only you? If it's just you. There's nobody else. And it's just you. And the Lord speaks to him right there. Debbie, read verse 11 at first, and then hold the spot.
The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake.
Okay, 2 things I'm moved by this. He's got a word from God right here. He's got a word from the Lord. Go out, get out of the cave to begin with. Get out of the hole that you're in. Stand up, stand outside here, and because the Lord is passing by. Now, we've heard this before. The Lord was passing by. Go way back to Moses. Well, no. Go back. Let's go back. We're not going that far back. Go back when he had him out. He's up on the mountain. And he said, I want to see you. And God said, you can't see me. But when I pass by, he hit him in the cleft of the rock. Pushed him into the cleft of the rock. So when he passed by, he wouldn't see the front of God. He just saw the back of God. Oh, it's there. It's in there. It's rich. That's rich stuff right here. But God says right here, he says, get out of the cave. This time I don't want you hiding. I want you out front. Because the Lord is going to pass by right here. The Lord's going to pass by. And then it says he's out there, and then the first thing that happens is what? Is a great strong wind, and it breaks open the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks. Now I don't know how he's standing there. So I'm thinking, if the wind is blowing to the point that it's crashing rocks together, that's pretty powerful stuff that's going on. But it said the Lord wasn't there, wasn't in that wind. And then the Lord caused a great earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake either. And I'm thinking, if I'm seeing all this, I'm thinking, this is the hand of God. That's the hand of God. But the Bible says that wasn't the hand of God. I don't know how he's standing. Maybe he's holding on to a tree. I don't know. But the earth is shaking, the wind is blowing, rocks are breaking, mountains are splitting open, and he's standing there seeing all of this. Now we're not done yet. Debbie, go one more right here. Verse 12.
After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper.
Yeah. It wasn't in the fire either. So you got strong winds that are splitting mountains and breaking rocks. You got an earthquake that's happening that's shaking the earth. You got fire that's coming out of wherever it's coming from, coming up. God's not any of those. And then there was this gentle breeze whisper after the fire. God spoke. It would have gotten my attention. I don't know if it got your attention or not, but it would have gotten my attention because I'd have been thinking, oh, Lord, because it's in the magnificence of these things, all this major stuff that's happening, you would think, this is God. Don't we think that now? Don't we have that tendency to think that when we see something cataclysmic happen, that God is doing something right there? Well, maybe not. It's the natural course of the earth at times. Now, I do think there are times when God has got to be moving in something there, but in all of this, what we may see as what a major event is happening, but it's not in those major events, but it's in the gentle whisper that comes behind all of that stuff. You know, it's like when you go through something major, and then God speaks some truth into your life on the backside of that. And it wasn't about all that big stuff right there, but it was about listening for his voice afterward. And there he was, and God spoke to him. He heard the sound of gentle whisper, gentle breeze, gentle blowing. And that's where God spoke at. Now, the Bible tells us in verse 13. Read verse 13, Tyler.
When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. So he wasn't actually standing out.
That's that. He saw what was happening.
Yeah, like he was looking back.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it's okay.
Finish reading that one.
Oh, then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?"
Okay. So, Bible calls it a mantle or a cloak. And he wrapped that around his face. He put that over his face. A cloak is that outer garment. The mantle is an outer garment, and it is a sign of authority. In some cases, it is a sign of empowerment. When the mantle is such as we're going to read before too long, when Elijah throws his mantle as he's being carried away in the chariot wheel from the chariot up into heaven. He throws his mantle down to Elisha. And that's a sign of empowerment as well. So he takes this mantle, he takes his cloak, and he wraps himself in it, covers himself up with this. God has spoken. And he's asking one more time, why are you here? Why are you here? What are you doing here? He's covered with this, and again, Damien, read verse 14.
He replied, "I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword.
Didn't you just read that? A few verses earlier. Yeah, it's the same answer. Because Elijah hasn't seen what's ahead of him. And God isn't giving him a message of what's ahead of him. And this is true for a lot of us in life. God doesn't give us the answer of what's ahead. He gives us the direction of where to go. I've told people, I've said it numerous times, that if I knew, have you ever said that? Well, if I only knew. If I had known. I've said various times, and I believe this, and I say it to be true. If I had known what it would be like going to Somerset to begin with, before I ever went, I would not have gone. But let me throw that in there just so people who are listening and watching will know this. But I would have missed out on some of the greatest lessons that I could have ever been taught if I hadn't went. And I would have missed out on the opportunity to become international in ministry. And the life-changing things that I've been a part of came out of as a result of being a pastor at a church in Somerset. One of the toughest places that I have ever been as far as church was concerned. Good people there. Good people. Mostly. Some of them weren't. Some of them weren't good. Some of them were not good. We didn't mix it all. Well, it's like what they say now over here. For some folks, we didn't G and haul like we should have. You know what that means? Do you really?
I've heard it here before.
You've heard it here, since you've here. Yeah. Did you ever hear it in Michigan? Never.
I think they actually used that phrase in a sermon.
I probably did. I've used it. Yeah, it's a common phrase. We didn't G and haul together too well. It didn't turn left or right. Yeah, I didn't turn left or right the way I was supposed to with some folks. Others we did fine, but I say that honestly. God hasn't spoken to him about what's going to happen in front of him right here, but he's about to. He's about to give him instructions, but he has told him, I just want to know why are you here? Now, I think I think Elijah's response should have been, well, Lord, because you guided me here. Isn't that what he did? Didn't he tell him way back there, get up and go? And he went 40 days journey. He said, return back is what he said, return back too. And so he did. And now he's fixing to tell him again, Damien, you can go a little bit further now. We don't want you just to read the same verse over and over again. Matter of fact, that verse isn't going to exist anymore. We're done with that one now. So go to verse 15 and 16.
The Lord said to him, go back to the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael, king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Keep going.
No, you're good right there. That's good. Now, I'm reading that and I'm thinking, okay, God's giving him instructions. But what's the last instruction that he gave him? Anoint Elisha. You know what he's saying? You're about to get fired. Elijah, we're fixing to retire you. He's not going to get retired yet, but it is going to happen. But he's telling him this is going to be the person who's going to replace you. I'm going to, and God is saying, I've already appointed this person. So here's what he's telling him. Okay, why are you here? I'm giving you the same answer before. This is, and I'm the only one left. I'm the only one left. Nobody else but me. And God doesn't answer that. Doesn't respond to that. He says, now get up and go back to Damascus, and I want you to anoint. This is what's going to happen. You're going to anoint Hazael, king over Aram, which is Syria. What we have is Israel. Here's my map. Israel, and you have Judah down here. And up in here, you have Aram, this part, which is kind of a northern part of Israel. Syria is right up here above this part. So you have this part, you have Israel, which is taking a long direction. Judah is coming down through here. And by the way, just for reference, right here is where Gaza is. It's down below, or on this line. Then you get into Palestine through here. So you got that's how it's shaped out. Just for informational purposes, so you know what's going on there.
Yeah, I got some information today on, about Gaza, I can't say, but anyway, that's where the Hamas is now.
Mm-hmm.
It's
In the Gaza Strip. Yeah. Yeah, it's bad news. Bad news for Hamas. I mean, you don't want to. Yeah, it's already there because all their fuel supplies and water supplies and electrical supplies have been cut off, and so now it's bad. Okay, I need to get done with 19. I was going to try to get done with all of this, but I'm going to try to get through 19. It's 27, 28. Here, listen to what he says in verse, it shall come to pass, verse 17, one who escapes the sword from Hazael, Jehu will put to death, and the one who escapes the sword from Jehu, Elisha shall put to death. Whew. And yet, but he wants him to know this. Here's what remember, this is what you've been saying all along, the two verses that you've read, Damien. I alone am left. What does he say right here? And yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. He said, you're not alone. This is the one word that he's getting right here. You are not alone. You know, you're in a tough place. You're in a difficult situation. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to anoint this one king here. I want you to anoint this one king here. I want you to anoint your replacement right here. But I want you to know this. There are 7,000 just like you that have not bowed down. And that's the word that he got. You know, that's the word of encouragement that comes to him. God says, Elijah's all way over here. Lord, I just want to die. First thing I'm going to do for you is let you rest. And then I'm going to feed you. And then I'm going to bring you back to where you can hear my voice. Then I'm going to show you all this stuff, but you're going to hear me in this gentle voice. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not screaming at you with thunder and lightning and earthquakes and fire. I'm speaking to you plain and simple right here. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to anoint, anoint, and anoint. And I want you to know you are not alone. I love that verse. I love that stuff right there. I mean, that's why I say that's what preaches right there. That's the good stuff right there. I just want you to know right there. And so, having said that right there, Deb, verse 19 tells us, go ahead and read verse 19.
So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th mare. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him.
Okay, all right. So that's what we haven't found the kings to anoint them yet, but the first person he finds is Elisha. And Elisha is plowing, and there's 12 yoke of oxen that are plowing. It means there's 12 different, there's six plow groups. Each one of them has two. There's 2 oxen per each group right there. Elisha's in the last group, and as Elijah walks by, he throws his mantle, throws that empowerment. Elisha knows what that means because he says to him, there in verse 20, please let me kiss my father and my mother, then I'll follow you. And he says, go ahead. What have I got to do with you? You know? And he gives him that encouragement there. So he returned, and he said he took a pair, that last verse, he took a pair of oxen, he sacrificed them, boiled their flesh with the implements of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. And then he arose and he followed Elijah and ministered to him. Became his servant. What a chapter 19 is just loaded. It's just loaded. And then you get to, we won't get there obviously, but we're going to get into chapter 20 is gangster. Next week is gangster. It really is. Chapter 20 is gangster. Read chapter 20. You'll see what I'm talking about. Read chapter 20.
I guess we'll have to
Read it tonight. We won't, next week, what is next week our boxing up the backpacks is next week, isn't it? Okay, so chapter 20 is coming. Everybody's finished up. I hear the ladies moving. Guys, we're late. The ladies are coming out. We better stand and pray. But we will start on chapter 20 the next time that I'm in this spot. All right. Thank you for being with us online. If you hadn't turned that off already. Okay. Appreciate you being with us. You can we'll say good night to you because Tyler's fixing to pray. Get us out of here.